So what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about the three questions on the left, right? And then we'll dive a little bit into specifically the one that most of you guys have is the one that you don't have motivation for, but you want motivation for it. A lot of times that's with grades or wanting to bring grades up or do better in school. So we're going to talk specifically about that one. But what we want to do is we want to understand that motivation is this very delicate balance of three main questions, okay? Three main things that we're asking ourselves, and if any of these end up being a no, we lose all motivation. It's like a three-legged stool. It falls over, right? So the first one is called autonomy, which is also competence, right? The question is, can I do it? Can I do it in the sense that if I do this and I've been given the responsibility to do this, that nobody's going to be looking over my shoulder, nobody's going to be constantly checking up on me, etc. So this is true, like, for example, if you're doing your homework and every 5 minutes mom pops her head in to check in on you, or here's another one that's very common in like middle school or elementary school, mom and dad always check your homework to make sure that it's turned in, right? What does that do? Well, what that does is it tells you and tells you as a student that mom doesn't trust your responsibility. Does that make sense? Because who's now responsible for your homework? You or mom? Mom, okay? So here's something really interesting. The kids who have more trouble in school are the ones whose parents have taken too much control of their schooling. The kids who are the best in school a lot of the times have been given responsibility from a young age and understand what their school responsibility is. Does that make sense? Their parents trust that their effort and their responsibility, that they can do it, and that's why they do their best to show that they're competent and that they have this ability. Okay, does that make sense? And so, number one, a lot of the times is like, oh, mom checks everything that I do. Why do I need to be responsible? She's responsible for me. And so it's easy. And the word that I usually think about here is scapegoat. Have you guys heard of that? A scapegoat. A scapegoat is somebody that you can blame for things that technically are your own fault, right? And so a scapegoat in competence and autonomy, a lot of times is when somebody else becomes responsible for you, okay? And so not only is this true in school, but it's also true in like the workplace as well. If you have a boss that the word that constantly comes up is micromanaging, right? Somebody who's like, oh, you should use this word instead of that, or hey, that doesn't look right. Let's fix that, right? Somebody who comes in and changes everything that you ever do, you start to lose motivation because you're like, dude, just do it yourself. Why are you, right? Why do you keep telling me to do this if in the end it's all your work anyway? I'm useless. What's the point? Do you see that? So another one is also just not thinking that you have the ability. Okay? So let's say, for example, can I do it? Ballet. Well, no, I can't do it. I've never learned it before, so I'm not competent. Or I have no competence. I am not competent here. Does that make sense? The autonomy, meaning that can I do it on myself? The word auto, like an automobile or automatic, means doing it on your own self. So autonomy, meaning that I can do this without anybody else's help. If I do need people's help, I know where to go get it. Well, the thing is, I don't even know a ballet teacher that I could learn from effectively. Technically, one of my aunts is a ballet teacher, but I have to go across the world to go meet with her. Does that make sense? So technically, I can't do it. So the moment I say no to that, I've lost motivation for that skill or that thing, okay? What I want to point out is that specifically is what we like to call in psychology a fixed mindset. You might have heard this. There's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is to say that, you know what, I grew up with the ability of ballet of 0. No matter what I do, that number will always stay at 0. I could go take 1,000,000 ballet classes, I'm still going to be a 0. Now, is that true, guys? If I took 20 ballet classes, do you think I'm still going to be at ballet ability 0? No, I'll gain something, right? A lot of it comes down to my motivation in the end, whether I show up to class or whether I even try the spins and stuff like that, right? So, fixed mindset. Now, another one is I can't or I don't have time, but a lot of that is blaming something else. There's another scapegoat, okay? You can scapegoat people, you can scapegoat time. That makes sense, right? And another part of this we'll talk a little bit about is procrastination, right? Why do we procrastinate? Why do we ever do that? Well, sometimes we procrastinate because we want to scapegoat time. That makes sense? Because if I keep procrastinating, at the end I can say, you know what? I could have gotten an A, but I just didn't have enough time. It was the time's fault. It's not my fault. It's the time's fault. Do you see that? A lot of the times when we deal with procrastination and perfectionism. Okay? So, can I do it? Competence, autonomy. Most of the time we'll say yes to those because especially if you have what we call a growth mindset, you can always do whatever it is that you set your mind to. You just need to give it enough time to do so. A lot of times with school, time is the issue. It's not your intelligence. It's not how smart you are. It's how much time you give yourself to do the learning. And a lot of times the test is before you've given yourself enough time. Does that make sense? All right. Second question, will it work? Like think of it this way. If you study for 30 hours straight and you still get an F, will it work? No, right? If you go to class and your teacher teaches and you get an F, did it work? No, okay? So a lot of times, will it work in consequence? If I put in this time, this is the final result. If the result is not worth it, right, you'll lose motivation. And a lot of times we compare here, okay? You know that kid at school who always goes, oh, yeah, that's fine. I barely studied for this. Shows off how he got an A+, right? It's like, oh yeah, I barely studied. Oh, perfect score, right? And you go look at it and you go, shoot, I spent 15 hours on this test. And you look at your grade, you got a B-. And you compare your 15 hours to their 0 hours. Now, is it worth your time? Did your 15 hours work? No. Well, given that you didn't fail, you did all right, right? But the thing is, we start to compare, right? And so not only did it work? Not really. It worked to an extent, but it wasn't worth it compared to what other people did. That makes sense? And so the second part, the mastery side of it, if you keep doing something and you never improve, you eventually lose motivation, right? So that's the same idea with something like weightlifting and any sort of sport. A lot of times with any sort of learning, you start to plateau, right? You start to get to a point where you don't really see big improvements anymore. That's where people lose their motivations. Do you see that? Okay. So another part of that is also still understanding. It's part of that fixed and growth mindset. If you look at what you're doing and you think, I'm never going to get better, then no, you're never going to have that motivation. That makes sense? And here's a big part of it is the mastery, and a lot of this is with school. We end up answering, will it work, is no. We like to blame either the teacher, right? We like to blame that we don't have the right resources, right? We don't have the right process to learn, so it won't work. But here's a question that I like to ask you guys. Are you the only kid to ever take that teacher's class? And are you the only one, and has there been somebody before you that's been able to pull off an A? Okay. Now, how did they pull off that A? Now here's a better question. Was there somebody of lesser ability than you who pulled off an A in that class? Statistically, yes, right? There's somebody who has lesser ability than you who's been able to already achieve and succeed. Now with that mentality, should you be able to do well, right? Will it work? Yes, it should. But here's the question. What do you need in order for it to work? You need the right resources, okay? The classes that you're taking, are they brand new classes where your teacher is the only one with the information on this entire planet? No. Okay, no. Because here's the thing, your teacher learned from someone else, right? A lot of this knowledge, it's out in the world, but it's up to you to go figure out where you can get it. Now, you guys are lucky enough where the internet does have a lot of it, but the thing is, the internet almost has too much information. Does that make sense? Now, how do you use that to your advantage? You go look for commonalities between people, okay? So when I tell you to go look up stuff, right, make sure you find 1, 2, 3 different resources, and if all 3 of them say the same thing, you know that's a true, for sure, fact, okay? Except for 3 people who all say that the earth is flat. That's false. Okay? All right? Now, mastery. If you don't continue to improve on it, you lose that motivation. Does that make sense? So the first question is, can I do it? Can I do it because I have the ability to, I have the resources to, I have the trust in the people around me that I can do this, right? Because somebody keeps saying, you can't do this, you can't do this. Do you ever want to do it? Right. And then the second question is, will it work? Will I continue to get better as I put in the time? And the third one is it worth it, right? Is it worth it? Because a lot of times we'll compare to other people. And it looks like somebody else spent 0 hours while we spent 15, and then it suddenly doesn't become worth it anymore, okay? And then there's also the idea that the purpose. What is your purpose of education? I want you to real quick flip over your page and give me a statement of what your purpose of education is.